last student of the haunted school. Ethan was one of the few students who stayed at the boarding school on weekends. Most of his classmates went home, but he had to stay as punishment. As the other students packed their bags and left, Ethan wandered through the empty dormitory hallways. His eyes caught an old, yellowed notice pinned to the school's announcement board. "Do not enter the classrooms after 11 p.m. He raised an eyebrow. What's the worst that could happen? A ghost lesson? He thought sarcastically. But just as he was about to walk away, another paper on the board caught his attention. It was an old newspaper clipping. 20 years ago, a student disappeared from this boarding school at exactly 3 a.m. The next morning, he was gone. No one saw him leave. Ethan's curiosity spiked. The student's name was scratched out. The date on the newspaper was blurry. Just then, a faint noise echoed from down the corridor. He froze and turned around, but no one was there. Just my imagination, he thought, shaking his head. Checking his watch, he saw that it was 10:45 p.m. This is stupid, he muttered and went back to his room, lying down on his bed. He had barely closed his eyes when the school speakers crackled to life. Attention all students, do not leave your rooms after 11 p.m. Ethan sat up, startled. The voice was distorted, old, like a broken record. He glanced at his watch. 11 p.m. And in that moment, he didn't realize the clock would never move forward again. Uncovering the school's dark history. Thirsty, he got up to get some water. The hallways were empty. The school was completely silent. Yet, he heard whispers. They were so faint, but they were coming from inside one of the classrooms. Down the hall, a classroom door was slightly ajar. A dime light flickered from within. Cautiously, Ethan stepped closer and peeked inside. The room was empty, but on the chalkboard, a name was written. Ethan. He blinked. The writing disappeared. Then he noticed something in the corner of the room, a dusty notebook. Blowing off the dust, he flipped through its pages. Most were torn or scribbled out, but then he saw a name. Daniel Walker, 2004. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This was the name of the missing student from the newspaper. On the last page, in shaky handwriting, was a chilling message. Do not look into the mirror at 3 a.m., or they will take you too. Before he could react, the classroom door slammed shut behind him. Then, the speakers crackled again. Attention all students, do not leave your rooms after 11 p.m. But this time the voice sounded strained. A faint scratching noise came from behind the door. Then a whisper. You've done this before. A time loop with no escape. Terrified, Ethan backed away, but something was wrong. No matter where he went, he always ended up in the same hallway. He opened a door. Inside was a completely dark classroom. Just as he turned to leave, he heard a deep breath from the darkness. Ethan slammed the door shut, and then a figure appeared at the end of the corridor. It wasn't moving. He blinked. The figure took a step closer. Another blink. Closer. Panic took over. He turned to run, but the lights flickered, and everything went black. A deep, ghostly whisper echoed in the silence. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the hallway. The lost student and the true nightmare. Ethan now stood inside an old classroom. The calendar on the wall read 2004. At a desk sat a student. His head was down, scribbling something in a notebook. Ethan's skin crawled. He took a step forward. Hey, are you stuck here too? The student slowly lifted his head, but he had no face. His eyes were just dark, empty voids, and he was smiling. He continued writing. They trapped me here. Now it's your turn. The speakers echoed once again. Attention all students. Do not leave your rooms after 11 p.m. The doors slammed shut. Ethan screamed as the shadows closed in, and then darkness. The beginning of an endless loop. He woke up in his bed. His heart was pounding. Just a nightmare, he told himself. But something was off. Looking around the room, all the other beds were empty. He slowly turned toward the door. There, taped to the wood, was a note. Trembling, he read it. I am the only one left with you. His breathing became shallow. A cold breath brushed the back of his neck. He wanted to turn around, but he couldn't. He closed his eyes, just for a second. And then a final announcement echoed through the speakers. Welcome, Ethan.